Now, may I invite the first group to join the stage with such an interesting topic about AI technology for evaluation of medical students' practice sutures from Mr. Ashwin Chawla.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ashwin Chawla, and today I'll be presenting our research topic on AI technology for evaluation of medical student practice sutures. This project is done by Ashwin Chawla, Pasiri, and Chanya, and we are from the Faculty of Medicine, KMITL. So let's start with our background. We know that suturing is one of the most essential clinical techniques that is required of all medical students. However, due to online classes, they have negatively impacted clinical skill and practice opportunities for medical students during the COVID-19 pandemic. We also know from previous studies that to evaluate sutures, we need to evaluate the wound closure, the centrality of stitch with regards to wound, and distance between sutures. So the objective of our research project is to create an evaluation tool of simple interrupted sutures by medical students using AI and deep learning, where we will evaluate wound closure, centrality of stitch with regards to wound, distance between stitches, uniformity of stitch length, and the stitch angle, so that students can practice and evaluate their own sutures remotely. This is a summary of our workflow, where we will start with a suture sample collection, which is then divided into a training and testing set. The training set will then be run through the Sirindhorn program, which is a platform to train our AI. The AI will be trained into 2 layers. The first layer will classify stitches as good or bad, and the good stitches will then be run through layer 2, which will apply points A, B, and C, which will be used to calculate for the stitch parameters. This will lead us to the final prototype of AI, where we will then evaluate with our testing set, which gives us our results. Coming into more detail of our sample collection, our collection method is by having suture samples made by medical students, as a standard suture practice kit is provided to all 4th-year KMITL students. And to ensure the consistency of the environment, we made sure that the lighting, camera quality, distance from sample, zoom, and rotation remain the same, so the images are identical. We also made sure that the excess threads did not cross the wound, as the AI might misinterpret it as a suture. After we got our data, we then randomized it into 2 groups, into a training and a testing group. Coming into our training program, where in our first layer, we did stitch and wound detection, where the AI would first detect each different type of stitches in one photo, since there are multiple. After that, the AI will then detect whether they are good or bad, depending on the contact wound of edges at stitch and wound intersection. So for example, in the image over here is an example of a good stitch, since the wound is close together. And over here is an example of a bad stitch, since the wound is still open. Apart from that, in the first layer, the AI will also detect the furthest left and right points of the wound, labeling them as wound left or wound right. After the AI detects a good stitch, the good stitches will then be further evaluated for stitch angle, equidistance from wound edge, and the stitch length. This will be done through point detection by putting the points A, B, and C. A being top of the stitch, B bottom of the stitch, and C the center of the stitch and wound intersection. So this is the results display of our Sirindhorn working screen. So as I mentioned earlier, in our first layer, the AI will detect the furthest left and the furthest right of the wound. After that, it will also tell whether the closure of the wound is good or bad. Once it detects good, it will then further evaluate the length of the stitch, the distance of stitch in millimeters, and then the positioning of the stitch from the wound in a ratio of AC to BC. So in an ideal situation, it should be closer to 1. We would also detect the angle of the stitch from the wound and how far away it is from 90 degrees. So the example of a good stitch will be shown over here, where it evaluates all parameters. However, if it is a bad suture, it will only show up as a bad suture and not further evaluate anything else. So coming into our results, the first thing that we evaluated was the wound and stitch detection, since if the AI cannot detect the stitches, it will not be able to follow any other protocol. So the AI was able to accurately detect stitches and distances at an accuracy of 89.6 and 89.4% respectively. For our wound closure detection, the AI had a sensitivity of 95.3, a precision of 100%, and an F1 score of 97.59%. And these are the results of our layer 2, or the length of stitch, positioning of the stitch from wound ratio, AC to BC, the angle of the stitch from the wound. So despite having really good results and an F1 score, we had two images where some of our limitations were that we had a small sample, and we had two error images during our testing set, which then evaluated as a negative data. So this warrants for further study using more testing samples, more types of wounds. We may use k-fold cross-validation and train with noise and blur for the training set. And lastly, we would like to compare between AI-guided and supervised suture practice. So the potential applications for our project is as a potential evaluation tool for medical students in simple interrupted sutures. We may also add on function for users to determine their own criteria for evaluation and evaluate the consistency of the distance between stitches based on AI detection. Thank you so much for your attention. Do you have any question?
May I get a question from on-site judges?
Hello? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you very much for such an interesting presentation and such an interesting research. I would like to know what is your next step further from this research?
So for now, since our evaluation, we have been able to detect the AI for detecting points and whether the wound is good or bad. We would then want to further evaluate using more parameters and then comparing it between using just the AI and comparing it to the supervised with a professor to see how well they work together and is it able to help students use it for potential remote use.
Question. Just wondering if there is any expert opinion used in this study as the gold standard, because the AI technology is used as the index test, right?
Yes. So for our gold standard, since currently there is no gold standard for sutures at the moment, so at the point now we look based on and look at get opinions from our professors, and we are taught how to do sutures. From there, then we train the AI and try to help get the raw parameters. That's why, for example, in our second layer, we did not tell whether the distances that they've gotten is good or bad, since there is no gold standard for what is the exact distance and what should be the frequency of each stitch, as it depends on the area of the stitch and the location of the wound in a human body.
Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your questions. So now let's move on to the question from online judges.
Okay, thank you so much. I tried to turn on my camera, but somehow the program didn't let me. So I apologize for not, turn on the camera. Okay, my question is, the duration, the time that the student use to finish the task is also important. How do you incorporate the time used for the procedure in this model?
So in this model, we still haven't used time as a parameter yet. However, we would like to use this for our further evaluation so that students can have an optimized time and settings when doing sutures.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So is there any more question from the judges?
So if there are no any questions, thank you for a wonderful presentation from Mr. Ashwin Chawla.
Thank you.